And there we go. We're on.
We're officially recording. Hi.
Hi, B.
Hi, Adi.
So
Um,
excited. First
I
official
know.
episode of Perspectives with Audie and Brandon. I'm so
What,
excited.
what is it we're doing? What is it again?
Perspectives with Audie and Brandon. It's a new
Mm,
podcast that we're bringing to you. Brandon and I let's talk a little bit about with our viewers how we know each other.
yeah. Um, you want to
Stephen at
start?
Boston State University,
Axum
2005.
Jacks. Axum
Axon Jacks, there
Jacks.
we go. The
we
theater
were we met
department.
in college, freshman
We
year,
met in
like
college. Yeah.
right off of the bat.
Theater department, and we have just been friends ever since.
Yeah.
Brandon is in LA, I'm in Houston, Texas, but we've stayed in touch all these years through you
And I
being in
think
New York, Austin, and then LA. Like we've been there.
we have, and the journey keeps going, but I often fondly remember this memory, and I think it's a great way to segue people into knowing an establishment. Like, we're both in our mid 30s,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we're open to admitting that where we're at with
35.
our journey.
It's fine.
But we met, and it was like any kind of maybe imagination of what college could have been like in the mid aughts, which is just like there's so much you're being absorbed with, and you're meeting a lot of people, but it was this like theater party that we all kind of cohesively clicked, and it was a toga party,
Uh-huh.
as traditional as it could be in a place called the theater house.
The
It
theater
was
house.
everything, and as I look back, and as we're taking this next like journey to like discuss this podcast, this idea, and these shows that we're going to hopefully talk about more, it's kind of a fond memory that like we started in a place that felt very young, and we've grown up in professional life, and that friendship has always been there. And I think that that's kind of why we're taking this conversation, that I hope people may want to listen to, because I think if anything, it's a conversation of friendship.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Which is the show that we're focusing on. That's the ultimate theme of it, is friendship. I
Yeah.
mean, in spite of all the bullshit and all the other stuff that we will get into, the ultimate theme is friendship. So I'm so excited to dive into this with you. And we've been
Yeah.
avid Sex and the City fans for a long time. In fact, we got into it in college. The
Yeah.
show ended in 2004. So really, we got into it on the tail end of reruns on TBS, because you you know that when you went to SFA, you got cable in your dorm. TBS came with it, and that's how we got into it.
And
And
you were the one that really introduced me to it, to be
mhm,
quite honest, because I had seen maybe a couple of episodes, but I didn't have HBO. My family at the time just was like, nah, we ain't paying for the HBO. So I never really got to watch it as it was going on. But once it was on TBS, and you were like, I remember it was your show, especially in college. Like, it was your unpacking show, it was your packing show, it
uh-huh.
was your
That
ritual
is what
show.
I always put it on when I got into SFA, and when I left to SFA, like moved into my apartment, it was always on in the background. And it getting on TBS was a big deal. I remember the ads for it, and like because it was the first time it was really shown in syndication. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was edited, but at the time it was just kind of like you still got the base of the story and the structure of it and the characters, and you got to know them.
Well, and you know what's it's a funny thing about this, because it's something I want to bring up, because I do think in two ways. One way being something that I want to say about the show in general and about our history, but in secondly, something about why we're calling this podcast Perspectives, because I think that there's such a unique term with perspective as a word in general, and I think we can discuss it, but in a second. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I had such a unique experience watching Sex in the City in the beginning, because back in, I would say, 2005 to like about 2007 is when I started really getting into it. And I didn't watch it in a traditional way, but a lot of people didn't watch television. We watched it in different formats. I remember you were introducing like different episodes, and I would watch it with you, and we'd hang out, and it would be fun. But I also remember during that same time, like, a cousin of mine was getting rid of like some of her VHSs, and she gave me like the fourth season of Sex in the City,
I
all
remember
on
that.
VHS, and I had binged it during a Christmas break. I was just like, I want to fucking, and it was my favorite season. It's always my favorite season, because I hadn't even seen the first or second in its entirety by that point, or the third. I knew some of it, but I watched the fourth because it's such a magical season. The
A
fourth
lot
season,
happens in season 4. A
that's the
lot.
runway, everything.
The Aiden comes back, and then that's the final chapter of Aiden. By the end of it, Big is going to Napa. Carrie cuts her hair short, gets a job for Vogue. She loses her apartment. It's a lot. Miranda gets
Yeah,
pregnant. It's a huge season. Huge.
huge, and it was one that I just because it was in a way where now I watch shows, I have to watch it from the beginning to the end. I need to see
Absolutely.
the whole structure, but I think that that's what Netflix and streamers have like kind of instilled into us, is this like need to like watch these
From
like,
beginning to end.
yeah, these novel experiences now. And Sex and the City is one of those shows
The
that, and I
replay
think
value is good
yeah,
for that show.
and it's why it worked on TBS. I think syndication worked so well for it because the narrative was little vignettes of chapters in a bigger story that I think is what we're going to talk about when we get into And Just Like That. How much I think this new show is really trying to make it feel like it's The Godfather now. Like it is so self-aware of itself in that way. And we'll get there. We'll get there. But to bring it back, it's why we started this. And I think for any viewers that are wondering what this show could be, it's right now we're going to be doing a 3-episode structure right now, where we're going to review the first 3 episodes in our first few episodes. And we're going to talk about other projects and other things that we're watching. But ultimately, this show, this podcast that you're listening to is going to be a lot about culture, art, and creativity. I think once we finish reviewing Sex and the City, but the reason why we kind of were thinking about doing this was I approached Adi a few months ago, and we both had been talking about watching And Just Like That and what we thought, and about all the secrets and the things that were coming out. And I had been wanting to do a podcast, and I couldn't think of anybody else other than you that I would want to start any beginning of a journey of how to make a podcast with, because I wanted to do something with one of my dearest friends and people I know. But secondly, it began as like, what if we did just a podcast about Sex and the City? And then we were like, maybe we've seen some of those before. And then we were like, okay, what if we do And Just Like That? And then we're like, yeah, that's like we'll do a review. And that's how we started this. But I think, and hopeful after we've finished this, there's going to be more topics that we're going to talk about in the future and more. So I'm excited to start that journey with you. And
Me too.
that's kind of why we picked this show to start off, because it's a way that we connected in our friendship back in college was through this show.
Absolutely. So many times in the dorm of us just watching random episodes and talking about them. And I mean, we'll get into this, but the way I saw Carrie back in 2005 is completely different from how I see her.
Yeah.
What, 15, 16 years later?
Yeah. She has evolved, and I think we're about to get into it. So let's, I think we've talked about, who we are. I mean, do you want to say a little bit about what you do, or?
I work for a nonprofit here in Houston called Nyehouse Education Center. And I also am an actress. I do theater in town, been freelance theater for a long time, since 2009. And I have SFA to thank for that. And it's just kind of feeds my soul. And I've been doing it for, just over 10 years in this community. But I don't want to get into it too much, but that is the basis of, yes, what I do. What about you?
Well, it has been a long journey. Started in New York City when I finished college, as you know, and fell into film. And I now live here in Los Angeles, and it's been working at making movies. It's my life, and it's been building this kind of idea around stories about magic and philosophy and action and witches and wizards and all these different kind of magical things that I kind of come up with in my brain that inspire me. And yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've got a movie called Earth Mother that I wrote and directed, as you know, and working with a distributor to actually get it out there. and it's exciting, but it's also learning. And being here in Los Angeles has really been like getting a sense of the professional reality of this, like the longevity. And I think that's something that we both have conversed about. And I think one of the things that I love about this, and I think what we're ready to get into now, and we can really kind of talk about, is like we've always loved talking about what we were watching, like what it is that like.
And I cannot wait to share with you what I have watched recently.
Okay. Do you want to go first? Do you want to go first?
Thank you. I would love to. I debated a long time about what to share on what I've been watching. I'm going to narrow it down to this. I've been, as I just told you, I've been very into the holiday spirit this year. Maybe because last year was such like a shit show with the holidays. Everybody was really like, COVID was still like at its peak. We don't need to get into that, but it was, people are more like, let's just kind of go out and do stuff this year. So I've just been watching like holiday movies, holiday shows, but the one that I watched, and I do it every year, and it gets better every year, is The Family Stone. And I thought about you and us watching that. So Brandon and I had a group of friends at college. Me, Brandon, it was the two of us, our friend Xavier, our friend Nash, our friend Mark, and his roommate Tiago sat in my dorm room and watched the Family Stone, which for those of you who have not seen it, it's not your average Christmas movie. Does it take place in the backdrop of Christmas? Yes. But there's so much, such a great ensemble film. Diane Keaton, Craig T. Nelson, Luke Wilson, who's my absolute favorite, and our girl, Sarah Jessica Parker, which is why I thought it was appropriate to bring it up. She gives one of the best performances of her career, in my opinion, in this movie, because it's so opposite of Carrie. And when I rewatched it, I was like, why don't you do more stuff like this? You're good at it. She's kind of uptight. She doesn't really fit in with the family very well, and they all kind of look at her as just like, no matter how good her intentions are, it just comes off as such a, bitch from Bedford, like she says. But her performance in it is just so damn good that by the end, you're still on her side, and that's hard. But rewatching it this year, Brandon, I mean, I do an annual viewing of it every single year, and it just gets better. And it's on Peacock right now. For those of you who have never seen it, it's streaming right now for free on Peacock. I highly recommend it. It's just so damn good. And Diane Keaton, I mean, talk about a matriarch, like that is her to a T. And it covers a lot of ground, right? There's 5 siblings, and all of them are different in their own ways. There's Rachel McAdams, who's the tough sister that we all love to hate, but her performance is so good in it. But I just thought, if we're going to talk about it and just like that, this is one of Sarah Jessica Parker's. She's a really talented actress, and I wish that she would do more stuff outside of Carrie. But she seems so like she doesn't want to let Carrie go. And that's okay. We'll get into that. But I will say, she really has some skill, and I wish that she would show it off more. But The Family Stone really does a very nice job of showing her range. So for those of you who have not seen it, I highly recommend it. But that's one of my holiday viewings. Today I watched Single All the Way. Is it great? No. Is it a cute little nice like tender rom-com on Netflix? Yes. If you want some nice like cheese for the holidays, like absolutely, I recommend it. So that's kind of where I've been. A lot of holiday viewing, and I just finished Hentified on Netflix, which is a fantastic
I don't know that one.
show. Oh, Brandon, you got to. Hentified. It's, long story short, family in LA, they own a taqueria, the neighborhood's changing. It goes from there. I won't spoil it too much, but you especially, you got to watch it. So that's where I'm at.
Is that the America Ferrera produced show?
Yes. It's fabulous.
I do need to watch that one. Okay.
It got me. And it's in Spanglish, which is nice. For someone like me who's trying to practice Spanish and learn it and pick it up and immerse myself a little bit more in it, it's great because the older characters talk Spanish, the younger, our generation speaks English, and there's a merge of that, which is really nice.
I'm definitely going to check it out. I'll check it out before our next podcast. I'll definitely check it out for the next one.
What have you been watching?
Well, I want to say one couple thing about The Family Stone. That's kind of why we're wearing our Christmassy sweaters for this kind of holiday episode. I'm really glad that you watched that. I rewatched that last year, and I've been thinking about rewatching it again because it's a movie that grows. I definitely think it is not the same movie that it was when it first came out. I remember when I first saw it, I didn't feel
We
as
saw it
like
together, I feel like, in theaters.
we did,
We
and
did. We saw it together.
I enjoyed it, but I don't know if I really grasped it. But
No.
recently, as an adult, the movie makes more sense with more age. It makes more sense. All
Bingo.
the characters actually feel more real than the gimmick of them being this strange family. And I actually think the portrait of what it is why I love Sarah Jessica Parker in that movie, because she plays the viewer that is not comfortable in it. And what's interesting is, as you get older, I think the movie is kind of like what a lot of movies do. The Family Stone, that they're like a stone. It's like a moment at a time in this, like, what I think came out the late 2000s. And it's this
Yeah.
kind of like moment where you realize, like, the world has gotten, whether people like it or not, everybody has started, I think, on some level having to accept that, like, nobody is the same, no families are the same. And the more we can get comfortable being around people we don't understand, the more I think we can be comfortable with ourselves. And I think Sarah Jessica Parker's character really conveys that. She starts off so physically wound up, and every time she gets more comfortable. And as a viewer, you don't feel that way, because maybe when the movie came out, it was more hot topic with dealing with gay relationships, dealing with affectionate fathers, dealing with
Mhm.
like open marriage relationships, and all these different kind of things that it dealt with. And all that stuff feels really kind of like not as shocking as it in 2021 or 2020 when I saw it.
Very true.
And it's interesting to see it. And so like I kind of see the portrait, it feels more authentic and real as we go into this kind of modern era that we live in. And it's a good one. I might have to watch that one again. That might be on our
You
holiday
gotta.
movie list.
You gotta. It's
But
so good.
what I've been watching is I was going to talk about the new Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man No Way Home. I finally saw it
I've
with
heard great things.
everybody else that helped push that movie over the $200 million opening weekend. It smashed records. It's incredible. It's, you know what, it's incredible. And I'm not going to do any spoilers. This is not going to be about any plot line, nothing. So
Got
you
it.
don't have to worry, viewers. I'm not going to like talk about it, but I'm gonna talk about why I think the movie made the money it made. And not that that should be important. I don't think we should always value art with money, but we do have to accept that on some level, outside of the money aspect, it shows how many people actually watched it and made a commitment that weekend in COVID with all the scary stuff. People said, no, I'm still going to go to this movie theater and I'm going to go see it. And that in itself is a value of energy that not a lot of other art gets, because television now allows us to all watch it from home. Streaming allows us to do that. And when you see this movie, it makes you realize, I don't know if you've been to the AMC's lately. They have Miss Nicole Kidman walking out, and she's got this little trailer, and
Yes.
she's
Oh, I've
like,
seen it. I've seen it.
she's like,
Yep.
magic. She's like, we
Yes.
love the movies.
Yes.
You know,
it's so, yeah. In her like sequin silver pant and jacket. Yeah, it's amazing.
looks like the Sears outfit. I
Yes,
mean,
but I love it.
It is. I love it, and I love her in it. And I love, because what she says makes me believe in what I believe movies are like. And I think when you see the new Spider-Man movie, for whatever it's worth, you're just watching 20 years of movie magic thrusted in front of you, and it just makes you forget about everything. You escape into not just the MCU, you escape into the adventure. And it's such a, like, this, the story is not real in like physics. It's magical, and that's what's kind of cool. It makes you remember like why movies don't have to be so literal. They can be these journeys, and it deals with multiverse, and it's an experience. Like it's a movie experience. And we saw it in 3D, and I highly suggest, if you really want to see this movie, I think, affect you in a way that's visually affecting, see it in 3D. It's incredible. The moments when things are just breaking apart, it's incredible to see. It made me love movies again. I've seen a lot of movies. I saw West Side Story, and I'm gonna go back and I'll probably enjoy it a lot more the second time I see it. But I did not get to escape in it, and not that I don't think every movie should escape, but I think West Side Story, the original, the reason why I fell in love with the music is it was always a place that whether I was feeling ennui as a kid or whatever, the music took me somewhere else. And watching the new movie,
yeah.
this movie was so self-aware of its what it wanted to say, and I think that's something I do want to talk about in it just like that. And I think we're about to get ready to go into it. So the last thing I want to say that I actually just watched before we talked was King Richard. I don't know if you've seen King Richard, the new Will Smith
Oh
movie.
yeah. I probably I don't like him, just to be perfectly blunt. As an actor, yes. As a person, he just gets on my last nerve. And I think his personal life is so rubbed into what he does that it's been hard to unsee it. But I
Totally.
hear his performance is very good.
It is. And I wouldn't have brought it up. I even was sitting here before we started recording and thinking, I was like, do I even want to bring it up? But his performance was that good. And
Okay.
it's not just about him. It's actually about all the other actors that are in that film. The two young actors that play Serena and Venus are so good.
Okay,
I
that's good to
mean,
hear.
yeah, I also think John Bernthal is in it, and he's incredible. He's got a fun accent in the film, and there's a lot that the film actually centers Will Smith's performance in a way. For me, I didn't feel like I was actually watching him act. I actually felt like I saw him transform. And they make, maybe the trailer didn't convince me enough, but when I actually saw it, the way they age him up and make him look actually made me like not see Will Smith. It was a really affecting performance. And I will say this, it was surprising. It's not, it's just a good performance. It was like a Sunday afternoon movie that I was like, you know what? I don't need anything flashy. I just want to turn it on. And I didn't know everything about Serena and Venus. And to hear or to like visually see it and hear the like dialogue express their journey, it was moving. I think, what they mean to people and in that world of tennis, it's cool that this is like, I think the beginning of many more movies we'll see talk about the journey that they went under to kind of become what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what
Those
I've been watching.
Pretty solid recommendations. I like it. I like it.
But I think it's time for us
time to jump in.
To do it. Okay, so
right,
drum roll. How do you feel about And Just Like That?
Okay, I have a list of first impressions. I'm going to go into them. I'm just going to read them off. These are popcorn thoughts. Okay, ready? Okay. First impressions. SJP falls back into Carrie pretty nicely. I was pleasantly surprised. Her performance as Carrie, it's solid. It's still solid. COVID jokes, don't really need them. Samantha's death fake out to Bitsy is silly. And anytime they mention Samantha, I don't care. It comes off like a jab to Kim Cattrall. They have clearly taken it very personally that she has chosen not to do the show. And every time they over-explain her absence, it feels like a dig. It just does. Samantha would have been at Big's funeral. Let's get real. She would have been there. So we'll get into that. Charlotte's face. Why do I care about Brady and his sex life? Some of the writing is very cheesy and falls flat. Charlotte's lips. Miranda is essentially becoming Cynthia Nixon in real life, and I don't know how to feel about it. Those are my
first impressions. No, I'm so glad you did it. And you know what? Here's the thing. This podcast is not about us giving any, I think, negativity. It's more about the perspective of the show that we're actually watching, right? And what you're seeing is why I think this show is a hot topic show. Like, they came out this season, and the first thing I wanted to say, I rewatched the third episode recently, and one thing that you and I talked about this show that we always kind of connected with, we love the show, but one of the things that we acknowledge why we love the show is the characters never wanted to be perfect people. They always had flaws, and that was their MO. That was the thing, and we were to watch them go through their flaws. And Michael Patrick King who's the writer of the show and the creator. He was a writer of Sex and the City.
Yeah, Darren Star is the creator.
Yeah, and is Darren Star the creator of And Just Like That? It's not.
No, it's Sex and the City. Sorry, you're right. Sex and the City.
So,
Yeah,
and Michael Patrick King is now the creator of And Just Like That. And I was thinking about it when I watched the third episode, and I was like, I feel like it's really his voice that we're hearing. And it's so much more. It's just got more bite to it. The show is like, it's not the easiest show to digest. It's not, but it's also so fucking familiar, and I love it for that. And it's got a lot of nostalgia to it that I'm like, there's a comfort that it brings, but I think it's because of the actors that we're comfortable watching have played these roles, be these people for so long.
See, I don't agree with that. I don't feel comforted by it. I feel like I'm watching this brand new show and I don't know how to feel about it. And I miss the wit and the sharp tongue of the show before.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing it and I don't like it. So for me, it's a little bit like I'm walking into this territory and I'm just like, what is this? And I don't quite know how to feel about it yet. I'm not going to go as far to say I like it. I'm not going to say that yet.
3 episodes is not enough to know if you really like it.
No.
I love the vibe that I guess I get. You know, like watching that opening, it was like, I was in the morning, both texted, we're like, okay, we're doing this, like we're watching this. Yeah. And seeing it in that moment and just the colors, it's so bright too. Like it is a very saturated show. Like they have said, goodbye film, we're inheriting digital. It's just probably cheaper, but they're going with a high-end camera, and everything is shot like a television studio set, not like a film. It's especially like when we were in Big's apartment in that first episode. Now I do think that aesthetic of fairy tale is slowly, actually weirdly enough, I started noticing it when I watched the third episode again, that the colors are slowly becoming more muted. So I do wonder if like they're coming out of the fantasy from what the show began and just like that in this first episode. And as each show goes on, is it going to become more, they're getting more in touch with their real selves again? I don't know if that's the aesthetic that they're going, but I'm picking up on the visual cues, because that first 2 episodes, especially the first episode, there's just so much, like, you felt like I was in a fantasy world. It didn't feel, that's what didn't make it feel like Sex City. Sex and City in the first season feels like New York in the 90s.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I didn't live there, but it conveys what we all felt was like an iconic image of what 90s New York could feel like. I've lived in New York, and looking at Sex and the City, and though I haven't lived in New York in the last few years, I've been back multiple times, and it still doesn't look like how they portrayed it in this, especially in the pilot for this new series.
Well, no, and I think it feels very much like the movie did. It doesn't feel like the show. It feels like the movie. Yeah. You can tell they're wealthier, all 3 of them. Carrie in particular,
so wealthy.
A lot wealthier. You know, in the original series, of the show, like especially season 1 and 2, you see Carrie in sweats a couple of times. That goes out the window after a certain point in time. But now, forget it. I mean, if she's even walking down the street, she's in sky-high heels and some weird-ass maxi dress from Forever 21 with like a button down underneath it, which I don't understand. But it's like, they're all in a different part. They're very established, and now they're living as wealthy women in New York. That's kind of how I see it. You know, Carrie's not in her rent-controlled apartment anymore. She's married to a wealthy man, John James Preston, who we all know had money in the series, but now they have a life together. Miranda was a lawyer, a success, and Charlotte's blue blood. I mean, she comes from, but now it's even more it's even more apparent. And she buys both her daughters Oscar de la Renta dresses. So it's like there's a lot of like name dropping, and they're established. But I do like your point about, yes, it is very bright, it's very pretty, it's very pastel pattern print, the sun's always shining. It just looks like, you know, I don't know if it's Upper East Side, but they're upper class New Yorkers.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know where they never really state where Big's apartment is that they're living in, and I
No.
think it feels like it's downtown, but it might be
Mhm.
Upper East Side because I know Charlotte's still in the same apartment, which was I think that was the familiarity that I enjoyed when we walked back into Charlotte's apartment. It was
That's
just like,
true. That's true.
especially at the end of the third episode, it's like we're going back to Carrie's apartment. I think that there are things that I like. What won me over in the first one, and by the way, spoiler alert to anybody, we're reviewing episodes 1, 2, and 3, and we're gonna go more into each episode breakdown
So if you have
in
not
a little
seen
bit.
it,
But if you've not seen it, we're gonna
stop
let it
now.
be known that. Do you want to say it?
Big is dead. Big is
Big
dead,
died.
dead. Big is and for those of you who are avid Sex and the City fans like Brandon and I, but even more into, how do I explain this? A different level of fandom. You knew that if they did the third movie, that's what was going to happen. So for me, his death was not a huge shock. But Brandon, you told me it was a huge shock for you. But that was always going to happen if they did the third movie, which we both know didn't happen. There was a lot of mess, a lot of negotiation, which to me is, and just like that, is the love letter to the movie that never was, which is why they killed him off.
Yeah.
Which made sense. It sucks. I mean, I would have liked to have seen Carrie just happily married. You never saw that in the series. I don't know that I want to see single Carrie frolicking around and dating and being her hopeless romantic self who makes a lot of bad judgment calls. But I could be wrong. Maybe at 50 she'll be different, or however old they are. But I think that as much as as painful as it is to watch, I think it was the right call killing him off. I would rather have seen that than them divorced, because that would have just been stupid. That would have been his fourth divorce, and we really didn't need to see that. And I'm glad that you see them established and happy in a very positive place before we see him make his exit off the Peloton, literally. So it's like, tell me how you feel. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it was shocking for me. I didn't really see it coming.
Okay, so you were like hella shocked.
I was because here's the reason why I didn't know what the hell the show was going to be about. To be quite honest, going into it, I kept the trailers did not help me.
You never read those rumors? There were rumors that he was going to die. In fact, our good Nash called it. She told me the day before we were texting, and she goes, "There's an ad for Biggs on a Peloton. I think he's going to die." So she called it. But I remember hearing there were a lot of spoilers that came out before the series premiered, and a lot of like, is this scene fake? Is this scene real? So I'm surprised you never saw something.
I wanted to go into this one with.
Okay, that's good.
I wanted to go into it as open as I could, because I felt like after COVID and everything, well, not after, we're still experiencing it right now in this world, but after the initial shock of this pandemic, coming back to it, for me, it was like familiarity. It was like going back to a group of friends, I would say, to a degree. Sex and the City felt, and I was like excited to see where the story was going. I know Chris, totally my partner, he totally called it. He had a feeling he was going to die, but I really didn't. And I didn't watch it with him. I watched it by myself first. And it was, when I saw it, it got me, because I do believe Sarah Jessica Parker's character and her have, in that moment, they became one. And I felt like she really played that moment. And I think that's why people, when they're giving her grief about why didn't she call 911, you don't know what you were gonna do in that moment. And I think
fair enough.
Carrie is not one of those people that does very well with conflict moments, as we've seen throughout the show. So she kind of, in many ways, reverted back to what Carrie does. She like shut down and was pleading and hoping he was still alive as he was dying. And it got me with the music and watching the shoes fall off her feet and the emotionality and what it, for me as a writer, what it signified, it justified why the show came back. Because I do think one thing that I heard that the creator was talking about of this show was how this one wasn't, we never really watched Carrie ever really be with Big in the original show. The original show was never really about her and Big's relationship. It either always, there was a fling going on, or it happened in between seasons during summer breaks or whatever. And not until the very end. And then even the movies, they struggle to have him in there because even in the second one, their relationship's fine, but he's not in it at all. And so it's Big was never what the show was about. It is about friendship. It is about the women together and their camaraderie, and that brings them together, that fortifies them. And it made sense that for Carrie, her life was, I think her life was always going to go on without Big at some point. And I don't think it would ever going to be divorce. I do think it was the most logical answer. Big liked his cigars. He liked his steaks. He was a health ad for a character that was, he literally is smoking a cigar when he knows he has a heart condition, about to go on a Peloton.
And from season 6, he has that heart procedure because she's there. So his heart problems, yes, they're variable. And he was hitting that Peloton real hard. I was like, oh my God, like I'm in pain just watching you. And he's very much, it really showed you their age difference. Like you always saw it in the show, but you really saw it in that first episode. First of all, his gray hair, he's kind of like and just seeing him, like he gets through the circuit that they give him, but that moment where he gets off the bike and really just like is, it's like, dude, this is a risky thing that you're doing. Go for a walk. My God. Lift some weights.
It was like and it was like literally having Chekhov's gun was the Peloton that episode. It was being allured to you. And as the music is being played by Charlotte's daughter, and she's just like giving you this like, and this is why I said, I was like, this movie, it felt like a movie in the sense that I don't think we're going to be able to really fully process the show. And that'll probably be our finale episode, will be once we finally have been able to unpack the whole experience. Because I will say this, whether this is working in their favor or not, what's hooking me is the fact that they're saying so much, but I don't know what they're trying to say yet. And so I keep going.
I don't know. What is the tone? I don't know. You're exactly right.
I don't know. And but they have 10 episodes. So I have a feeling the tone will come out because, girl, the number one thing you said in your list, I mean, there's two things that you said that stuck out that I want to talk about, but first thing I'm going to say, and I keep watching it, Miranda, who's Miranda? It's Cynthia Nixon now.
And I'm like, look, we know, what did she run for some sort of public office in New York?
She ran for governor in New York.
Thank you. That's what this is like, an endorsement. That is exactly what the fuck is happening right now. And I don't like it. I don't like it. I think it's weird. It's like, I found this article that said, just pardon me for saying this, but I think we both know it's true. Miranda's turned into a white liberal nightmare. It's like she's woken up and it's like she doesn't even know where she is. And I'm like, what? Who are you? Like, you're not that like, it's just. And she's a struggle. She's a hard character in the original series. It takes you a while to like get on her side and like her, but she has this amazing growth. And it's like they took it and just started her back from square one, but in like the worst possible way.
But so I think But I think if you think about it though, like in some ways, that's what these characters have become. They've all reverted back to being their like initial self, and whether that's a commentary on maybe what it is to be in your 50s, I feel like it's trying to convey that like they're no different than their younger 30 something selves. They have way more money and life is a little easier because of the convenience of the money that they have, and because of that they can make things happen. I mean, we're talking about Carrie. I was like, wait a second, I was like, she's acting like she's got to work hard doing her podcast. Don't get me wrong, believe me, podcasts is a job, and it is a very lucrative job. But at the same time, I was like, oh yeah, what makes sense is that she is got this amazing life that she's living with Big, and her day job is that she gets to go do a really fun sex podcast comedy show. But it's just like it's at some point I was like, is this fantasy? But then there's this level of it that I'm like, no, I don't think it is fantasy. It's almost kind of like Succession in the way that they're just that rich. These characters were always had money. Even though Carrie may not have had money at times in the show as much as other characters, she was supported by a lot of people. And the thing that keeps happening with Carrie's character that I think is the root of this show, and this is not a prediction, but I think it's the real thing she cannot escape, is what is your value, Carrie? Because it's not that sex is what she's about anymore, and nor was
No,
sex what she was ever really about. And
no.
that's what I think the original show discusses, is that even with her character, the sex column was really a way for her to discover herself.
Yeah,
And
and then she
now,
talked about relationships.
yeah, and now she's like, she has no relationship. She had her big relationship, and now she's literally, what was interesting in the third episode is how they're using, like, she's walking nonstop, and she's just like walking and walking because she can't stop moving, because
Mhm.
she doesn't know how, that's why she can't sleep. She literally doesn't know how to be in herself. And I think that that's always been her character. That's why when she has her freak out with Aiden in Sex and the City, and she's like, I can't wear this dress, because she couldn't, she's like, her thing is always changing. I think
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
why I think that's why SJP, and I know I'm watching Carrie. It's not really Sarah Jessica Parker at the end of the day, because I'm pretty sure Sarah Jessica Parker's life with Matthew Broderick, and she has kids, is
Pretty
a very
stable.
different personality than who she is.
Mhm.
But she has played this character so much that at this point, I believe when watching SJP that I'm really watching Carrie being come to life through her. And
Mhm.
it's interesting because I'm rooting for Carrie as SJP, even though I don't know her really. But I'm like sitting there and I'm just like, I want to know where you're going, because her character has always had ups and downs, always been messy. And this show is like, we don't want her messy, but she's still not, she's still flighty. She's still not
Oh,
grounded. She's
absolutely.
still like dealing with, they're all dealing with different transformations. But when it comes to Charlotte and Miranda, it's much more topical. It's very like, oh, you guys have pulled from the COVID 2021 playing card deck, and these are the things that we're going to give Miranda. She's going to deal with, she's probably going to be gender queer now, or something's going to happen with her, because they're
Oh,
clearly
yeah,
alluding to
they're
her and
alluding to
Che.
that, absolutely. And then the
They're,
alcoholic thing, I'm kind of like, really? Do we have to go there? But whatever.
I know. And then the whole thing, like, that I really, to be quite honest, is like a big topical thing that's really just, I don't know how I feel about it. I I get it. I understand it's I feel like it's Sex in the City trying to be Sex in the City, but the whole thing with Brady having sex in the apartment, it just seems like, I get it. Okay, cool. You acknowledged it, and that was shocking enough. But then they keep like reinforcing it
They
over
do, and
and
it's
over.
weird. It's so weird. And I don't really think that's something Miranda would even do or allow. And they don't really explain it. And honestly, I don't really care that much about the kids. Do we care? Like, do they even need to be in the series? I'm gonna say no. Like, it's just kind of like they weren't the focus in the original. Why are they now? Charlotte, I kind of understand a little bit more, with her two daughters, and she's always been like so maternal at something she wanted so badly. So I kind of understand that a little bit more. But with Miranda and just that whole thing, I just don't understand where it's going. And it's like at Big's funeral, he's like, "Dad, I'm sad," and blah blah blah. But then 5 seconds later, he's like smoking pot, and then you see him like riding his girlfriend. It's just really, it's weird and it's kind of cringy. It's a weird, like I could do without that aspect of the show. I don't think it's giving us anything that we need.
So right now, I guess that's a lot of our first impressions that we've just
Oh,
like been
absolutely.
kind of like the hot zingers. Before we get into the real, I think, breaking down the episodes, which I think we can talk more about the story elements that are really sticking out for us. Let's talk about the controversy, because I think that that's part of what's really kind of
Yeah,
fueling this show. And I don't know if they inherently knew that they were going to be dealing with so much controversy, but a part of me thinks that it's them steering the conversation through it.
which with Chris Noth.
No, just in general, all the controversy around the show, like
Oh, absolutely.
everything. There's so much that's being spoken about that's dealing with like people like feeling one way or another, like with ageism, or dealing with people that feel their way about the Kim Cattrall stuff. It's just like, is it helping the show, or do you feel like the controversy is starting to kind of, you know, take more? Is it getting in front of the show?
Well, this week it might start because we both know Chris Noth is not having a great week. There's been three
Yeah.
women who have had allegations against him. As of today, he was dropped from his talent agency in LA. I think that's unfortunately going to take a front seat. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have said that last week. I do now. Now that's the whole Kim Cattrall thing. I think she made the right choice in not coming back. What they were going to do with her character in the third movie was just disgusting and didn't even fit her. I don't know if you know, but it was going to be like she exchanged text messages with Brady. And what they did with her character in the second movie is just atrocious. I mean, it's just stupid. She became like a silly caricature. So I don't really blame her for wanting to be like, I'm out.
Yeah.
What they should have done and what they failed to do, and why the controversy around that has become so prominent, hasn't died down, is because they kept addressing it in the show and they didn't need to. I even have in my notes right here. She should have been mentioned once, and that's it. She moved to London. Leave it alone. We don't need to see the text messages. We don't need to see she used. Do you really think that that Samantha would have depended on Carrie for money? Fuck no. She was just fine on her own. She had a good PR company, remember? She had more money than all of them when it first started. Maybe her and Miranda, like, self-made. She was a self-made woman. She made her PR company. She was successful. She did Carrie a favor in the original series by becoming her publicist. She didn't need it. She did it out of the kindness of her heart. So I'm like, in what world would she ever become dependent on you for money? Would she see you as an ATM? None. So that's where they made the mistake. And I think that's why it keeps being paid attention to, because they didn't let it go. It's come up, what, in 2 episodes now? Like, no, just leave it. She moved to London, let it go. Or they should have just killed her off. Hey, she died. Oh, so sad. Okay, leave it. You know what I mean? Like, that probably would have been better.
Yeah.
It just feels like I feel like it's SJP's really weird way of like apologizing or being offended. And it's just not, it doesn't fit with the character of Samantha. So I think that they have messed up in that regard. But like I said, I think we're not going to hear as much about it anymore because of what Chris Noth is going through. So I'm very curious as to see, that there's going to be a moment this week, I suspect, where SJP is going to come out with something. We both know it's coming.
Definitely. I mean, and I think it's ironic that it happened right after he died on the show. And to be quite honest, just to any of our viewers, we're really not going to go into any of the details or discuss this, because honestly, for the two of us, it's not what we're here for, our perspective right now. Now, if it becomes a point that it impacts the show and the narrative that's being told, then we may address it later on. And we do, at the end of the day, I think both of us acknowledge, at the end of the day, anybody who's going through those situations needs to be able to have the freedom to express themselves and say what they have to say. And so, we support anybody, and hopefully they can find whatever justice or whatever's happening, let it find its own course. And so for us, we're focusing more on the story and the perspective we have with the journey of these characters. So we may be getting real nitty gritty with the characters. And I do think sometimes the actors impact the characters, as like this Kim Cattrall controversy. I do think that, Kim Cattrall it was so funny that all the media people were like, this, like the weekend that they were talking about her death, or not her death, but talking about her not being on the show, people were like, oh, she was being shady, not liking certain things, or she was liking this thing. And I was just like, I think the real controversy is the media that wants to perpetuate 100%. This narrative. And, I don't know, maybe the writing, they were trying to get back at her, but I felt like the way they conveyed her character, that she was moving away, made sense to me. And I'll tell you why I think it makes sense. Is because I think Carrie is still not, I think the show this season, even though Samantha's not going to be there, something happened more with Carrie and her, I believe. And I don't think Carrie has really confessed it. So her whole answer of, oh, she thought I was an ATM. It's just Carrie projecting some type of way to deflect. With the real truth is that she's still hurt that the fact that her, and I would believe really Kim Cattrall, I think she viewed her closer. And Kim Cattrall just, I honestly, when I hear all this stuff, it wasn't even just about the character. I think she's just a different place in her life. And that's really what it came down to. She was in a different place in her life now. And it was like, I can't go back to this. I want to do How I Met Your Father. I want to go on.
Which I am so excited about, but that's another podcast. But yes.
Hold on, my door opened.
No, it's okay.
No, I am too. I'm very excited, and I do feel like it is gonna be one of those. I love How I Met Your Mother, but I'm actually excited to see How I Met Your Father, because maybe they'll be able to go down some other story bloopers that the original one went down, didn't go down. So, but you know, the fun thing about the way they wrote Kim Cattrall into the story and through Samantha leaving, I do agree. The COVID jokes, I was a little bit like, they were cringy. And you know, the one thing that was really shocking was how they portrayed COVID as already being completed in the role.
Yeah, I read a couple of that. I read some articles that alluded to that as well.
You know, I don't think I think they really thought they were projecting like Biden did, that we were going to be back to normal by now, and nobody really understood variants. Nobody understood what this was going to be, and so now we're in this like rigmarole of experiences for us, where it's just like, I don't know, here in LA people are having to wear masks now, back in all over the place again. Things have closed down, and it's weird to watch the show try to portray normal life. And it's like, well, when does this take place? Because it's like, is it supposed to be 2022, 2023? Because like, it's so far now. And that's the thing, it feels like futurism. And I guess that's the thing about the show. I think Sex and the City felt current. It felt like it was happening now.
In real time. Yeah.
I feel like Sex and the City is, and Just Like That is happening. Like, it almost feels like it's 3 or 4 years ahead of us. Like, I don't feel like it actually fits the relative timeline anymore, because they haven't really stated what year it is in the show, but it feels not like, it doesn't feel right now. Because that's the only way I can watch it, because I'm like, I don't know who these people are. I don't know what the world is that they live in anymore, because they feel so like, we're not, in our culture, we're not talking about, oh, do we still wear masks? No, you still got to wear the mask, and you still got to deal with it. And it is, at least here in LA, it's a big part of life becoming back into that, with this like variant crap going on. And so it's just, I mean, I don't know if it's affecting it in a negative way, but it is definitely hard to watch a little bit, because it doesn't feel, as much as they're trying to make it feel real, like that they've been a part of this experience. I'm like, you guys feel like you're in an alternate reality where COVID ended very early, because it's just, and it's not their fault. I guess they thought that the world was going to be different, but some of the jokes don't land because of it. It just feels a little kind of like
when Bitsy kept saying like, do we hug? Do we not? Like, they're harping on it too long, and it's like, just, we don't need to hear it. And then I think Carrie makes the comment about like, I wore these gloves, I started it, and now I'm continuing to wear it as something I picked up. It's just too like, it's too on the nose. Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we don't really know what year it is yet, but it seems like it's skipped ahead to more than, when was the second movie? Maybe more than 10 years after the second film. I mean, it's been a minute, because Carrie and Big, they've been married for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe it is futuristic. Maybe. And maybe they didn't feel relevant. Maybe they didn't feel like they needed to say the year, but I think that's a really, really good point. I'm gonna have to watch it with that lens for the next episode.
I think it helps. I do think it helps watching it, because it does feel strange. They feel alien in a way. All three of them. The way they're also designed, the makeup, the costuming, it makes them feel so like, they don't even feel like the regular characters. They feel like they got buffed up. They feel like, you know, in Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy and all of them, and they go into the Emerald City, and they start like waxing them and like making them feel like all-star versions. That's what they feel like now. When they turned around, I was like, whoa.
Well, and look, with the controversy surrounding the ageism and the gray hair, I don't care that they have gray hair. I don't care. What I do care about is the costuming and the fact that the costuming is aging them already. The way they're dressing Carrie, I'm like, what are you wearing? Why are you walking around in sky high heels? I mean, I guess she would have done that before, but like, it comes off as she just looks silly. They're trying to make her look so edgy that it looks silly. And the reason why I take issue with it is because it, again, and I know I'll probably stop doing this at some level, but in the original series, her style evolves. And she even says at one point, it's time for ladies like our age to cover it up. Like she kind of matures and becomes a little more conservative in her style. Not completely, but some. She still has fun with it, particularly in Paris, but she still has a level of, now it's like, what are you wearing? And it was just like, it was like that button down with the maxi dress over it with these like huge like snakeskin heels, and even her funeral outfit. I was like, it's too costumey, and it's not really reflecting where I don't know what they're trying to do, but it's too much, and I think that's why she looks older than she actually is.
But
that
all
is
the
my theory on
characters,
that.
but it's all, but all of them do, which is why I have to like, sometimes I have to like, okay, I have to pull myself out of the show that I thought I was watching and be like, what is it that you're presenting to me? And I guess that's why I feel like it's futurism. They feel like these are all like the people that built Star Trek. Like, it's just, everybody feels so like cosmopolitan, like these new characters, like Miranda's teacher, wonderful actor, but the way they dress her and everything, the colors and the styles, it's cool, but I'm just like, what world is this? Because people have muted tones and whatnot, or they don't wear things that are always extremely fitted. Everybody's fitted in clothing. Like nobody wears loose baggy clothing. Even like in the third episode, I saw Carrie. She was like dressed up in like, it was like her at Big's apartment. It was at their apartment, and she was like wearing socks with like some type of like sleep short and like a long sleeve with a t-shirt on top, but it was still fitted, and it just like she was still like, everything was clean, and I just was like, even rich people can look a little messy. I feel like that's actually the thing about Kristen Davis that I actually really like. People have given her a lot of flack about her face, which, to be quite honest, I just think, people, they don't know. We don't know anything about her. But what I do know is that she's an actor that, in many ways, as much as of all the others, she's the actual one that still looks real. She actually makes me still feel like I see Charlotte. I actually like her storylines. I actually like how she's reacting, and I like that her face to me doesn't look like somebody who got work. It looks like somebody who's just aged into it and still has her own looks. And I feel like her character, of all the other two, like dealing with with Rose being potentially trans, actually is really nice work. Like, I was watching it and seeing her, Che, we're going to get into, we're going to talk about Che in a moment. But I really love Che's monologue, which I think was really well written at the show that they did. And I feel like that moment when they're talking about the acceptance of being queer and seeing Charlotte understand in that moment that what her daughter was telling, or what her child was telling them at that moment, wasn't about Charlotte. And Charlotte kind of, you could see her character still growing, because Charlotte's character throughout all the show is always having to remember, it's not about you. It's about so much more than just you, because so much of the things, Charlotte isn't always just like me, but there's many times when she's so set in her ways that she has to get out of her own way. And you see in that character moment, it's not like she spends the whole season. She heard something finally, and she realized, like, you know what? My daughter is telling me that they don't want to be called a girl. And instead of me standing in the way or making it about me, I'm just going to listen. And it's really cool because I think the first 2 episodes, Carrie has to explain that to Charlotte, who's all crying. It's like, you think I killed Big, it's all my fault, which is a very typical Charlotte mode
Charlotte
to do.
response,
Even in the
absolutely.
movies, she always makes it about her. And so in that moment, it was nice to see it. And I think Kristen Davis is doing some really nice work, because I think her playing the character, she could have like made it really simple, but I feel like I see her character changing.
She
It's a little
grew
bit
on
easier.
me. She grew on me by the second episode, like like she started to grow on me. So I will agree with you on that. I so far I don't like Che. I'm just not. It's she's not doing it for. They're not doing it for me. I
Yeah.
just I see what they're trying to do. It's just coming off as too preachy, and it's not fitting. It's not. It's just I. And how many times do we have to hear that they're half Irish, half Mexican diva? Like, how many times do we have to do that? It's just coming off as like, I feel like they're trying to be funny, but it's not. At least to me, it's not. It's just it's. I don't know. I feel like they're trying to just compensate for a lot of stuff they didn't do in the original series. So they're like, let's bring in this character. And I think the intentions are there. Maybe I'll change my mind in a couple of episodes. I don't know. But so far, I'm not there. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
Not there yet.
You know, they are an interesting character, and that's all I'll say. We don't have many characters. There's a lot of new trans and queer characters,
Yeah.
I think, in television, but this one feels less real, but I think it's purposeful, because to me, I think the writers of the show want to make the statement, and they're using this platform to make not a real person, but a character that can say all the things that they want to say. And I think that that's why they literally gave Che a huge scene in the 3rd episode to just monologue, as they are this character that's supposed to be doing a Netflix special. And all 3 of the characters are listening. How often do we ever have that moment in the show where the 3 of them, the story isn't about them listening to something? It's usually about them in their relationship, or what are they doing, or what are they discovering, or who are they fucking, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. This is a moment where they're like supposed to be there listening to what I think the creators of the show are trying to put out into the world, which is not to make people more, I think, queer or different, but to express like how much we shouldn't, I think, criticize people anymore. And I think that that's what this whole show is actually trying to do. It's why the whole thing in the 3rd episode between Natasha and Carrie, it's such a crazy scene that
it is, but I was pleasantly surprised.
It makes no sense. But then at the same time, I'm like, I like what they're saying, because
I liked it too.
Huh?
I liked it too. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I was so into it, because I was like, I'm like, this feels like a fantasy. It feels like a fairy tale. I'm like, oh, we're not supposed to watch 2 people that hated each other. They literally hated each other. Carrie made fun of Natasha after Natasha even hurt herself, was like, oh, I finally still have a thing to hate her with. Like, I mean, they hated each other. And then all of a sudden, because at a Starbucks, a random Starbucks, she opens the door and Natasha happens to be in there. And they like explain it away. And I'm like, it's really not about the explanation. I guess it's just the fantasy. It's the fact that like these characters are living in a fantasy world, making amends before, I don't know, are they all going to die? I don't know. It's just.
But I did like that we got to see, because at first I was like, man, do we really need to see Natasha again? I don't think so. And you called it because we talked about it. And you were right. It had to do with the divorce proceedings. But I really, first of all, Bridget Monahan looks amazing. Natasha's always been cleaner, polished, more put together than Carrie. She just is. Even the way they style her, the way they costume her, very clean lines, very like statuesque, tall, thin. She comes from money. You can see all of it. But she's also genuinely a sweet person. Until she catches Carrie having an affair, which rightfully so, she turns, which anybody would.
Yeah.
But I liked that you got to see her, both of them, but more her, get this closure. And you get to hear that she's married. She has 2 boys. She's moved on. She was like, I never even understood why she, like, Big was just a phase in her life that she still doesn't really quite understand why it happened. And she doesn't care. She's moved on from it. And to have her confronted with a woman who has not, even after all this time, you finally get to see her be like, hey, let's just, they needed that closure. I didn't think they did, but watching it, I was like, no, we needed that. We
Yeah.
needed that for Natasha. I don't think we need to see her again. And I don't think we're going to.
I don't think we are
But
either.
the chapter closed and I appreciated it. And I was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked that scene. I thought both of their performances were really nice and they finally got to kind of, but I liked it more for Natasha. I think she kind of deserved it more than Carrie. A little bit. I'm like, at the end of the day, Carrie was still the mistress. She just is. Like, no matter how you try to spin it, it's like, you did something wrong with all of that. But I was pleasantly surprised by that. I thought it was just gold. I really, really did. And that's what it was. It was the last time we saw her, it was her falling down the stairs and chipping her tooth. And then you go to the season finale of season 3 and they had that horrible conversation that not only have you ruined my marriage, you ruined my lunch. And now we get to see her past all that and just being like, hey, stop chasing me, let it go. That was kind of like what she was saying, like, hey, this is done. Like, I've moved on. You need to do the same thing. You need to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, and I don't I understand why Carrie felt the need to kind of obsess about why is she in the will? Why is he still talking? Why did he feel that? And yeah, it probably was out of guilt. Probably. But it's just like she didn't need to go to her office. She's still the Carrie that she always was. Like, she's such a bitch, blah, blah, blah. No, she's not. She was Big's wife, and you came in and you did something you weren't supposed to do. And that's what it always is going to come down to. And I think she finally got that in her head. And so I really liked that closure that we got. I think that's so far been my favorite moment of the first 3 episodes. I really, really liked that a lot. I feel like Chet and Miranda are going down the path of most likely getting together. But I have to wonder. I do wonder, I'm curious of how they're going to handle the inevitable exit of Steve, because we both know it's happening. Probably an amicable divorce, maybe, or just like an acknowledgement of like, because she even mentions like we're practically roommates. I know I've changed gears here, but I'm just like,
no, it's good.
one of
it's
the things in my
good.
notes. It's like, I'm wondering if they were going to go this direction with, and I guess we do have to see it. We do have to see her come to terms with who she is, end her marriage, and then start her new life, which I assume is what's going to happen. And maybe just because I have a soft spot for Steve. Maybe it's because I just got married this last year. I don't know, but I'm just like, oh, poor Steve, because I know it's coming. Like it's gonna, like he's gonna, it's not gonna, it's gonna end. Their marriage
Yeah.
is that's the direction it's going in. But I always liked Steve, so I guess for me it's like, oh, but we're in a new show now. We're in a new season. We're in a new life. We're in the future. I don't know. And again, that comes back to your point. How long have they been married? How long has it been? Obviously, a long time. Brady's what, like 17? The last time we saw him, he was like, I don't know, 7, if that, maybe even younger. So
Yeah, I guess.
in the
Yeah.
movie, you see him. So he's still a kid. He's
He
maybe
is.
5 or 6. So it's been a hot minute. I just part of me is like, man, did we even need to bring Steve and Harry back? I wrote that down at some point. I'm like, Harry kind of, Steve. I'm like, oh, did we? I don't know.
I just think it's I think that's the thing. Like the show had these so and I think we're ready to get into the episode breakdowns. Let's really kind of like switch into that. The first episode is in many ways it's just about Big and Carrie. It's all about Big and Carrie, and everybody else is an outlier. And then the second episode, it becomes about the family. And then the third episode is really where I think it's starting to grow. And I think Harry and Steve are going to be big parts of what are going to be the later episodes, which is really about their lives. And I agree. I think Miranda and Steve are ending. I think they've decided to give Miranda a new life, and they really wanted to be closer to Cynthia Nixon. They didn't want her to be, I think, any more just a separate character. It really is blurring the lines now, and I think that's because they're all executive producers now on the show.
Yes, but is that acting?
It's
That's where I struggle.
It's television, right?
Yeah.
TV isn't about reality. It's about
That's true.
the mirror that is both. And I'm not saying that that's always the right choice. It just depends on what the show is. And we have to remind ourselves, and Just Like That is not Sex and the City. Sex and the City will always be a story. I think
that's a new chapter, just like they marketed it. So you're right. Okay. Maybe I need to be more open-minded. I don't know.
Well, I think I don't think there's any, I think you have to see it for your perspective. And I think that's the whole point. Even my perspective, maybe, because the way you're seeing things, I totally feel you. I can see it's why I feel the way I feel, certain frustrations with certain character choices in this, and but I think that's the point though. And there are things that you see that I feel like help us have this conversation, because it's not about what was right or wrong. I think it's just about these characters. I think at the end of the day are trying to be one thing and one thing only. They're trying to be people that are making us feel a certain way about stuff. And I guess that's always been a thing about the show, and especially in the beginning, the characters in Sex and the City made sometimes really tough choices to always agree with as a viewer. And I think that this show is carrying that torch, but it's being a little bit more incendiary with it, because I think they're making a point that I think, really are tired of the culture that we're living in. And they want the world to be this like cosmopolitan, saturated, everybody is expressive, empathic people. And it's a good image to put out in the world. And I think that's, in some ways, I wonder, had we not gone through 2020 and had the show still come back, would it be saying the same things? I really do think COVID impacted this show so much, to the point that the writing, it doesn't even feel like the people that have been writing the show, because I looked up the people that wrote majority of these episodes were also executive producers on Sex and the City as well too.
Okay.
And it just feels like what we all have been going through in COVID, we all just don't have any time to deal with the crap anymore. And I feel like that's kind of why, like, Sarah Jessica Parker came out with her article about the ageism. And I do think that that's also why, they've been, the cast has been more vocal about not trying to take on the criticism this time around about the way they look, because for them, it's just like they want people to see, I guess, the imperfections in the fact that they're trying to be perfect. I feel like that's why the costuming is off. It does feel like the costuming is trying to make them feel not that what the way that they were like form fitted in the beginning. When they all see them, it's like, I feel like by the end of the season, their style is going to completely change, because the characters are going to become something different. I do feel like by the end of the season, all three characters are going to be different people. They'll probably be very different characters in different situations.
Yeah. So with that, what do we think is going to happen in the remainder of the season? What are your predictions?
Ooh.
We both know Miranda's gonna we both agree on Miranda and her journey.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it could be shocking. I do feel like her and the Brady thing and the Steve thing has got to become something more. They're writing it in so much that I think Brady's going to get that girl pregnant. And I feel like that could be a storyline or something, because I mean, these kids are having sex all the time, and it's just a lot, as the show implies it. So I do think her and Steve are ending, but I also feel like, here's the thing that I think that the show actually might do with them. I don't think they're going to get a divorce. I think they're going to go into an open marriage. Okay. And I think Miranda and Steve are a partnership because they have Brady, but I don't think Miranda is looking for because I don't think Che is the character is ever going to seem like, oh, I need to shack up with Miranda. Che, the character, seems like, as they've stated, is all about change and expression. Yeah. So Che's going to open up Miranda's expression but I don't think Che is going to be in a relationship type of personality.
Okay, that's a fair point. I can see that. I'm very curious as to. I'm really interested in the friendship between Charlotte and the friend. She's in one of my
Oh,
favorite movies, 200 Cigarettes. Love her. She's gorgeous and she looks so good in this. I forgot her name. You know what I'm talking
yeah.
about. I'm excited I'm looking forward to seeing that relationship develop. I don't know why. Um, just the few bits I've seen of her, I like, and I'm excited to see how that's going to go. I'm curious of how they're going to address Stanford's absence.
Oh, her name is Nicole Ari Parker.
Nicole Ari Parker, love her. I'm
Yeah.
sad that, man, so Stanford, like, I've always struggled with Stanford and Anthony Marantino. I thought Stanford was matched perfectly with Marcus. I always liked him and Marcus. I never liked the pairing of him and Anthony. I never thought it was appropriate. And it's sad because he's no longer with us, but I think he deserved better than what they've given him so far in what we've seen, which is sad
Here's the
because
thing.
we're not going to see anymore.
I know, because the third episode was his last one.
Yeah.
May he rest in peace. May Willie Garson rest in peace.
I know. It's so, like, I feel like they were kind of for a second trying to replace Charlotte with him. Like him having lunch with them, like you never see that. You know what I mean? Like him having lunch with the three, that I was like, no, this is like, if there was four of them, Charlotte was always there. And if she's not going to be there, then it just needs to be the three girls. So I kind of struggled with that.
You mean Samantha?
Yeah. Thank you. And if Samantha's not there, then it's just the three girls. Like anytime they're eating together, which they do a lot, you know, that's a big part of where they have all their conversations. It's usually just the girls. So I guess seeing Stanford in that, I was like, well, this is weird. And like you and I talked about that moment of him with Big's executive assistant, him being so rude to her. They made such a thing about that. I'm very curious as to where I feel like that's going to be brought up again, like you and I discussed. But I just feel like my ultimate point is Stanford deserved better. And I agree. I'm sad that we're leaving him like this. It makes me like, oh, damn.
Well, and I think though, here's the thing. I think the show's going to do a second season, probably, most likely.
I think so too.
And I think because they've stated that they're not going to address his death in this season, that it was a shocker to them. So they're not going to talk about it in this season. But I have a feeling they'll probably do, whether it's a special or some type of thing, they'll probably do some type of send off to his character in some way. I feel like that. But I have a feeling that does that mean that Anthony's not going to have that much in this season to do, or is he going to just have his own? I don't know. And it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that storyline. I am intrigued. Is it going to just kind of go off to the wayside, or is it going to be acknowledged that maybe he's disappeared or he's left and Anthony is staying in town by himself? I don't know. We'll have to see where it goes, but
Anthony and Charlotte still have a close friendship, so that's where he'll remain. I feel like when we see Anthony, it'll probably most likely be with Charlotte in their exchanges.
And talking about the kids.
Exactly. It won't be, I think beyond that, we won't really see him much. I don't think we'll see Harry too much either. I think Harry's just kind of like the Charlotte's husband, girl's dad, or excuse me, you know what I mean? Rose and Lily's father. He'll have his little one-liners, and then that's probably all we'll see. I think Charlotte and Harry's marriage is still pretty solid, which I like.
I think it's the constant in all the marriages that we have to have in order to show for it to go on.
I think so too. And I've always loved their love story. Always.
Me too. It's a good one.
First time you introduced him. And I'm glad that he's still there. And I think you're right. There's also some little Easter eggs throughout the series, if you look. And one that I noticed is the first bar that Miranda goes to before her class to ask for a drink. What was it called? It was called Smith's, which we know Smith Jared. That's kind of what I took it as. I was like, the bar's called Smith. I'm just finding Easter eggs, so I'm just gonna say that that's what that was a nod to. Smith Jared. Yeah, and I'll probably say more of those throughout our podcast. But yeah, I mean,
I will say this: if we're talking about, because we're kind of concluding, I think for our episode. So I think our final big thing that we should talk about is where do we see Carrie going? I think Carrie is going to be the heartbeat of the show, as it always is. And
they're going
I
to get her with
think
that producer.
Carrie's going to leave New York City by the end of the season.
Oh, I don't know. She would never leave. She wouldn't be able to function anywhere else. But the show can't. I don't think the show would work anywhere else, Brandon.
You don't think so?
No.
If the show is ending, if the show is like, if this is the final chapter.
Okay.
If it's the final chapter, I think then I could see her finally leaving after everything, and her selling Big's place is also going to be more about her closing out her life. Maybe she's going to stay. If the show's going on, then I wonder if it's going to be about who's Carrie going to date or what's Carrie doing, because she's got a job. I'm like, the thing is, and this is the hard thing that I'm trying to understand. This is probably what we've been talking about, the tone. I don't know what the conflict is of the show right now. They killed Big off. And so I know that these characters are going through transformations internally, but I don't know what the conflict is. Like in other seasons, the conflict is pretty straightforward. Like the first season, it's all about them dating. And the conflict is, are they going to get in different relationships? The second season and onward becomes more about Carrie and Big. And is that going to happen? Carrie and Aiden, is that going to happen? Are they going to get married? No. Yeah. Going to Paris, meeting the Russian. The conflict becomes about the real relationship. So I'm like, are they going to introduce some new beau? It doesn't make sense that they would try to introduce a new love interest. So I'm like, I think her relationship to New York is really what this show's going to be about.
Okay, I like that. That's a really good, okay, I'm not mad at that. I think that would be okay. Because like I said, I don't know that I want to see flighty single Carrie. I think we're past that. I think we saw enough of it for 6 years.
She's also rich as fuck. Let's just be real. Big died and he left her a shit ton of money.
Yep.
She rich. Yep.
Real rich.
She real rich.
I mean, yeah. Okay, I like that theory. I like that. And she will date. She'll go on dates. She'll do little cat. Obviously, they brought in that producer who laughs at her joke. Obviously, he's there for a reason. We all know where that's going.
Exactly.
She'll probably go out with him a couple of times, maybe. Okay, we'll see. But that's a really interesting perspective, and I would like to see. I wouldn't be mad at that if that's how the show concluded. I think
the only reason why I could say that is if they're done and they're ready to conclude it, it only makes sense because Carrie needs to then move somewhere else to begin that next chapter of her life, because she was always synonymous to New York. I mean, she could stay in New York, but then I'm just like, then what is it about? Her dating in the 50s?
I don't think we really want or need to see that, like.
It's cool. I mean, we're going to see it, like you said, we're going to see moments, and that's going to be fine. But if that's all the show is about,
focus,
then that feels like reductive to its growth. And so it's like, there has to be some form of conflict. And this next episode, as the teaser shows, it's about, episode 4, I think, is about her meeting a real estate agent to help sell Big's apartment. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But I've loved doing this with you. This is amazing.
So much fun. I'm so excited to see what we unpack next week. The show airs every Thursday on HBO Max, and we drop it first thing in the morning. Like, you don't have to wait till a certain time to watch it. So
pretty good.
Stay tuned, everybody. We're gonna just keep unpacking the show, and we will do a separate episode for the finale. But for now, we're gonna group 2 or 3 in one.
And it's just kind of this format. We're really just gonna have a conversation about it, and we'll break down things, but it's just to really talk about like how we view the show and the perspectives. And we're not here to do like scene by scene breakdowns, but we will get into all the controversy of like certain aspects of it, like the fashion and the certain character choices. And yay, episode 1 of Perspectives is here.
Woohoo!
Woo, 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 woo.
Okay, well, I'm so excited to do this next week, and I look forward to what's going to happen on Thursday. I don't know.
Alrighty.
This is like the second post-Big episode. Funeral's done, everything. Like, we're going to see where she goes.
Yeah.
So I'm excited. And have a happy holiday if I don't talk to you before then, since we're like, 5-6 days away from Christmas, which is insane.
And just like that, it became
And
Christmas.
like that. On that note, yes. Love you, B.
Love you,
Right.
Adi B.
See you soon. Bye.